And what's brilliant about this technique is once you've got this big mental map, you can actually move about it freely. So you don't have to go in order around it. You could jump to your living room and see the numbers there, or you could jump up to your bedroom and see the numbers there. So I thought if we're trying to learn the staff, to be able to go to any point is what you need. Every good boy does fine. The problem with it is an ordered list that you have to move up. But if you can freely move around, then I could see real potential in that.
Hey there, I'm Rachel Ehring, and you're listening to the Top Music Piano Podcast. Get inspired as we discuss creative resources, trends in piano pedagogy, ways to grow your income and streamline your studio, and new ways to engage your students each week. If you are a teacher who wants to go beyond the method books to create an innovative studio that fosters lifelong music makers, you've come to the right place. Hello there, piano teachers. I am so happy that you're joining me for this episode. It's a really unique one, and I think that you're going to enjoy it. My guest today actually isn't a piano teacher, but rather an educator who saw a problem in the music education space and set out to solve it. Rowina Seidler tried for years to learn to read music through all the traditional avenues and wound up frustrated and feeling like there must be a better way. Today, she shares how she used techniques that she learned in the classroom from memory champions to create a resource that she hopes will fundamentally change the way note reading is taught and learned. Here's a bit about Rowina before we get into this fascinating topic. Rowina Seidler is a London-based educator with a long-standing fascination with pedagogy. A lifelong piano enthusiast, she created the Noteology app after discovering a way to teach her children 29 notes in 5 days using the techniques of memory champions. Here's my chat with Rowina. Hi, Rowina. Welcome to the show. I'm so excited to talk to you today. Could you start by introducing yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, so I live in London, in England, that is. I've got 3 children and I'm married, and I am a trained teacher. I did a program called Teach First, which, have you heard of Teach for America?
I've heard of it, yeah.
Yeah, so it's basically that program came over to England, and they take energetic young graduates and throw you straight into the deep end in an inner city school, often one that struggles to find teachers. So that was the teacher training program I did, and I've been involved in education in different capacities ever since. I'm also a piano enthusiast. I love I've always got a composition going, but I was never a music teacher. And then by day, I currently home educate my children. And by night, for the last 2.5 years, I've been working on an app called Noteology, which basically uses the same memory master techniques. So have you ever seen someone on television memorize a huge number, like a 70,000 digit number? So it basically uses those same memory champion techniques to teach the notes and the keyboard geography. So that's what I've been working on by night for the last 2.5 years.
Okay, I'm so interested in this. And when we first started talking, I thought you were a piano teacher. And then you're like, no, I'm not a piano teacher, but I have this background in education. So can you go into that? You kind of touched on it a little, but tell us a little more about your education background and how you became interested in music reading.
Okay, so my studies at university were actually, I did a degree in computer science and AI. Then I became a teacher, and then I decided to retrain to be a religious education teacher. So in England, that's actually a subject that you would learn in normal school. And then part of that master's, we covered a lot of general pedagogy, and we learned how to start analyzing different pedagogical approaches and compare and contrast and things. So that's sort of my education background. I've been involved in many different projects over the years all over London.
Can I ask you a quick question? This is totally a side tangent. But when I was looking at your background, you studied AI like decades before any of the rest of us knew anything about AI, it sounds like. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. So I did computer science and AI in 2001.
Oh my goodness. We had no idea what AI was until like last year. The rest of
I
us caught
know.
up.
So I used to never even tell people I studied computer. I just say I studied computer science because they wouldn't even know what AI was. So I'm almost embarrassed to mention AI sometimes now because it's got so many negative connotations as well.
Yeah. I just thought that was so interesting. Okay,
Yeah, I mean,
sorry.
That's okay. The AI's actually been studied in university since, I don't know, 60s or 70s. So it's been around for a very long time. It's only just finally working, I guess.
I guess so.
Yes.
That's so interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And then you were asking how I became interested in music reading. So just imagine right now, you've got four people in front of you. One is my great grandma Edith. And I just imagine her in black and white because she's passed away. And then you've got my granddad Ed. Imagine him in black and white. He's passed away. And then you've got my mum, Tara. And then you've got me. And all four of us have something in common, which is that we all were obsessed with the piano from a young age. We all played by ear. Three of us love to compose music. And none of us learned to read music until recently. This, for me personally, has brought an immense sense of sadness and frustration and this sort of imposter syndrome because I deeply felt like I was a pianist, but then I couldn't read music. So I always felt like a sort of imposter. And it just brought a lot of sadness to me. And then on my 40th birthday, my mum bought me a piano. My first real piano, because I'd had a keyboard that I'd always carried around with me everywhere. And when I got that piano, I made a decision that my children were not going to be the fifth generation of pianists that could not read music. And that's what led me to start becoming interested in music reading, because I thought I need to teach myself how to read music first, and then I can teach my children.
Mm-hmm. All right. I know our kids, they spur us on to great things sometimes, don't they? We're like, okay, I want them to do something that I wasn't able to do. So did you take piano lessons when you were younger?
Yeah, so when I was 6 years old, so as I said, I was obsessed with anything that even looked like a piano. So my mum, first of all, bought me one of those tiny little keyboards. And then she realized I was playing it nonstop. So she bought me I think my grandpa helped pay for us to have a proper full-size one. Now, her mum wasn't that interested in music, but she was obsessed with it. So she did live in a house at one point with her grandfather who played, and also with her cousins. And so they taught her loads of little pieces by ear. She would just learn them by rote. So she taught me all those pieces. And then once I learned everything that she could possibly teach me, she taught me her compositions that she'd written. I then started composing my own pieces. But I didn't have my first formal lesson until I was 11 years old. And by this point, I'd been playing the piano for many years and I just loved the piano. And yeah, then I remember my first lesson being just this immensely frustrating experience. So suddenly my hands were stuck in the middle of the piano with my thumbs on top of each other. And I was just learning sort of one note at a time. And yeah, I found it really challenging and really difficult. I've spoken to some teachers about this, but have you found this is a common thing with students that play by ear, that they sometimes find it really difficult to then transition to reading music?
Absolutely. In fact, it seems like most pianists are one or the other. Either they're sight readers and they can read the music, but they can't play by ear, which is me, or they play by ear and they can't read the music. And if they're really good at playing by ear, they don't want to learn to read the music because it feels so hard and they have to play like simple songs when they can play more difficult songs by ear.
Yes. Yeah. So that was my experience. And it led me to kind of quit, I think, after 10 weeks. But then I did my mum found me a teacher who is willing to sort of work with me, developing my ear more and composing and things. And then I actually did, in England, we have a GCSE exam system. So I actually chose to do music. And I was the only kid in the class who didn't read music. And I just felt like a square peg in a round hole. But I did learn a lot of theory at that point. So,
okay. All right. So take us back to that time when you decided you wanted your kids to learn how to read music. What was next? Because there's a lot that must have happened between then and now.
Yes. So imagine at this point, I'm basically viewing the notes as kind of Chinese symbols, right? They're just abstract symbols in my mind. I then remember back to my lessons, and I remember every good boy does fine. And I think, first of all, is that the way I'm going to learn to read? Because as an educator, I'm just thinking about it sort of logically. I'm thinking I need a one-step process. I need to be able to look at a note and in one step know what that note is. Every good boy does fine. If I want to know that F, I've got to actually go through 6 steps. I've got to first identify the correct mnemonic, and then I've got to go every good boy does fine. So another 5 steps. So I was thinking that's not a very efficient process. So I kind of ruled that out. And then I thought I'll try flashcards. So I made myself some flashcards, and I was using them every day. First of all, it was boring because sometimes flashcards can be quite boring. And then after I think a week and a half, I'd learnt maybe 4 notes. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to take me months and months, and it's so boring. So then I came across the landmark notes approach, and this got me excited. So there's sort of 2 parts to it. First, learning to read by intervals. And I could see that this was a one-step process, because once you could identify the size of the jump or the skip between notes, then suddenly it was just a one-step process to get to the next note. So this got me really excited, and I saw real potential in this. But the second part of the landmark notes approach is the landmarks themselves, that the notes you use as reference notes, which is usually about 9 notes you learn. And this got me slightly less excited, because still there were 9 notes I needed to maybe memorize through some sort of flashcards or some sort of drilling, even though I know there's some ways you can do it, looking at the patterns between the C's, reflecting the C's in the bass clef and things. But that I thought, okay, it's a bit boring, but I can do it. But the bit that concerned me slightly was that I saw that if I was playing by interval and then I came across a note that I didn't know and it wasn't a landmark, I would then have to figure out which is the nearest landmark and then calculate the size of the interval from that landmark to get the note. And that's a 2-step process. So I was thinking, again, this isn't the most efficient way of doing things if I want to reach fluency really fast, even though I know lots of people have great success with the landmark notes approach. But that was just my thinking at the time. And then I had an idea. So I thought back to my second year of teaching, 2005, at my school, Greg City Academy. And we call them the head teacher, but in America, you say the principal of the school, invited a team to come in that would basically teach my exam students these memory champion techniques to help them revise their exams. And it was amazing. He actually had arranged for this team to spend the entire day in my class and demo technique after technique and actually get the kids doing the techniques themselves. And this absolutely blew my mind what I saw that day, because when I'd seen those people on TV that you've seen and they memorize these huge numbers, I'd always thought they were geniuses. And I didn't realize that actually a lot of them are just like me and you. Maybe they've got slightly better memory than us, but it's the techniques they're using. And so one of the techniques they showed it's called the memory palace technique. And they said to the class, I'm going to get you to memorize 30 items in order in 30 minutes. I thought, impossible, an ordered list of 30 items in 30 minutes, no way. And then they did it. Every single kid in the class did it. And do you know about this technique, the memory palace technique, a little bit?
Just from a little bit from your app that I've messed around with, but I would love for you to explain it to the audience.
Okay. So say you're going to memorize some numbers. So it's often used for memorizing huge numbers, like as I said before, up to 70,000 digit number. So say you imagine opening your door at home, and you open the door and there's a giant helium balloon and it's a giant 0. And so you squeeze in through the middle of the 0 and you look, and there's a mirror on your wall, and you look at your face in the mirror and you're looking absolutely incredibly perfect. And then your face melts away and there's a giant 7, because 7 is the number of perfection. And then you look down on the floor and you see a mat and it's got lots of 6s on it, and you don't like the number 6 and your feet are dirty and you wipe your feet off on the 6s. So you create these kind of stories you see as you go around. So by doing that, you would have learned 0, 7, 6. But you can keep it going, because our brains are so brilliant at locations and images and stories that you can keep going. And suddenly you've memorized 20 digits and 50 digits and 100 digits. And what's brilliant about this technique is once you've got this big mental map, you can actually move about it freely. So you don't have to go in order around it. you could jump to your living room and see the numbers there, or you could jump up to your bedroom and see the numbers there. So I thought, if we're trying to learn the staff, to be able to go to any point is what you need. Every good boy does fine. The problem with it is an ordered list that you have to move up. But if you can freely move around, then I could see real potential in that.
Okay. So how did you translate that to note reading and to creating this app?
So basically, I thought, if I can turn the staff into an imaginary world, a fully immersive experience where they can, through stories, where they can climb into the staff and move around it. So just to give you a visual picture, so you've got the sky up above the treble clef. That's a beautiful starry sky with the moon and sparkly stars, and the ledger lines are clouds. And then there's the main part of the staff is a tower. And then underneath you've got a sparkly lake. And then the base staff is under the water now. And then below that you've got a cave. So you're creating this whole world. And then the characters are C for camel, D for dolphin, etc. So there's lots of different ways you could build this. And I know I'm not the first to have used characters and things and stories, but basically I just combined a whole heap of memory master techniques to build the story. So it's using about 10 different techniques to make the story highly, highly memorable and immersive. And then, so that was was the first step, was creating the stories. And my children helped, and I tested them out on my kids a lot, and they gave me ideas for characters and things like that. And so that was basically the first part of it. Later, I then thought, okay, I need to also create stories for the keys to tie the characters from the story down to the keys on the piano. And so for that, I ended up creating piano overlays. Yeah. So an interesting question would be, how do you think a beginner sees a piano keyboard?
I think they just see black and white, but they don't really see the patterns.
They don't see the patterns, right? I think that's right. And I just did a webinar, and I actually showed a picture of an AI keyboard, because, if you ever ask AI to build a keyboard, it just gets it all wrong and puts all the black notes in the wrong place. So I think a student, that's kind of how they see it initially. So you're trying to bring order from chaos. So I created these cottages and fortresses, and the cottages being the C, D, E keys, and the fortresses being the F, G, A, B keys, for the characters in the story to live in. And then I was like, well, how do you differentiate from one cottage to another? So I decorated the cottages based on where they come from the story. So the camel who lives up high in the sky lives in the sky cottage on the piano, which is decorated with beautiful stars. And the evil cobra that lives under the ground in the cave lives in the evil cottage down at the base notes. And I created immersive stories so that the students so the first story is up on the staff. They actually are kind of an observer to the story. But the stories on the piano, they actually step inside them, and they climb into the keys, and they feel the wetness of the water on their feet, and they hear the breeze through the trees, and etc. So that's how I did the memory palace technique for the staff and keys. Yeah.
Wow, it's so creative, Rowina. I love this. So tell me, practically speaking, if someone's like, okay, I want to use this app, I want to learn to read the notes, what do they do? How much time does it take? Can you give us kind of a walkthrough of what it looks like?
Yes. So time-wise, I'll just start with the time. So time-wise, it basically takes somewhere between, from the data we've been able to look at, because we collect data there, somewhere between 5 to 7 hours to go from not knowing a single note at all. And on day one, you don't know the key on the piano, don't know even middle C, to reading and playing accurately 29 notes. So that's the time. And when we tested it, initially we did like a boot camp, so they'd start on Monday and then finish on Friday. But teachers often probably wouldn't do it that way, but that's kind of how we tested it initially. And then it's set up as a 5-step system. So step 1 is the treble note system. That's actually the part of the app that's completely free to try, and teachers can send it home with their students as well, because it's free. And that starts with the story, which is the camel and the tower story, which is a love story about a camel on a raft who has been staring up at the beautiful camel queen in the sky, and longing for the day he could meet her. He's a winged camel, but he cannot fly. His wings do not work. And he has to try to get up to her. And there's all kinds of dangers in the tower in between him and the camel queen. So that's the first story. And then they practice saying the names of the characters that they learn in the story. And the first games are getting them to just practice those names. And then they start having games to practice the positions of those notes. And within an hour to an hour and a half, they are now identifying those 15 notes with 100% accuracy. So they're seeing one of those notes and they're just able to go, oh, that's F for fire because the top of the tower is on fire. And that's A for ape because the ape is sitting on the first cloud up. So that's where they get to at the end of the step one. And is that all clear so far?
Yeah, I think so.
Yes. And then step 2 is the treble keys system, which is where they're going to now play these notes on the piano. So this is where they get introduced to the cottages and the fortresses and those stories. And at this point, the kids love it because the app now listens to the piano. So they're able to control the characters using the piano. And I think I don't know if I mentioned it so far, but all these pictures are all hand drawn. These are all hand drawn and hand painted illustrations. And the reason I chose to do that was for 2 reasons. So one is that it actually, from a memory point of view, we remember things that are more beautiful, and we tend to find hand drawn things more beautiful than computerized things. So that was one reason. And 2 is that I wanted something that really inspired people. And I use a lot of education apps with my kids, but I couldn't say that many of them I felt were deeply inspiring, even if they were very helpful. But I found a lot of my books, our children's books, very, very inspiring. So I tried to get more inspiration from the books rather than from apps generally. So it kind of has a sort of storybook feel.
Did you ever think of making it a book instead of an app?
I did at one point, actually. But then I was just thinking, kind of, because my big goal is to sort of help people all around the world. And I just thought a book's much harder to distribute than an app.
Yeah.
So,
no, I think the app it works great for what you're trying to do, the interactive part and all of that. It's different than a book would be for this
yes.
context.
But it's also kind of fun, the things you can do with an app that you can't do with the book. So I was able to illustrate the water that I'd painted with watercolor, but I was able to illustrate to get it moving and things. So I kind of like to think of it like a living book, sort of.
Did you do the drawings yourself?
Yes.
Wow. Beautiful.
Thank you. So at the end of day 2, they're now playing those notes on the actual piano. And the idea is to remove all the help. So they start off with the full picture on the staff. They've got the piano overlays with the characters on them and with the backgrounds and everything. And then they get weaned off them. So the piano overlays can be flipped over. So they're now just the empty cottages and fortresses without the characters and without the letters. And then they get removed completely. So by the end of day 2, they've just got a blank white staff on the screen, and they've got just a normal piano with no overlays, and they're able to successfully play those 15 treble notes at the end of step 2, which initially was the end of day 2 when it was a 5-day system. But I've changed that recently because the piano teacher said it confused them because they can never do it in that kind of time frame because the lessons. So that's day 2. And then day 3 and 4, exactly the same, but the bass clef. So it's different story. So in this story, I always love those like underwater, the idea of people living underwater and little people. And like, I love the story, The Borrowers. So we created these little water people. So you've got the baby and the daughter and the father that live under the water. But they had some great tragedy happen because the mother had been up on the surface trying to get food a number of years before, and she'd been taken away by this wicked cobra. So the father tried to create a safety for his family by giving them each protectors, which is the crab and the eel and the goldfish. But what he didn't realize is that under the ground, actually the cobra was there with his sidekicks, the dog and the eagle, and they're hatching an evil plan to use the flute, F for flute, to create an evil song that would destroy the world. And I'll leave it there. But it all turns out, both stories, they all turn out happily ever after. So that's the bass clef. And then, yeah, like I said, it works exactly the same as the treble note system and treble key system. And then finally, you've got the grand staff system, brings it all together on the grand staff. And at the end of that day, they're playing all 29 notes with 100% accuracy, without any help on the piano, without the overlays.
Wow. Okay. So I am so curious how piano teachers are using this. And I know that you're not a piano teacher, but I know that you've tested this with other piano teachers. What does it look like? Because are they doing this in the lessons over a number of weeks? Or is this something the students are doing at home? What do you recommend, or what have you heard teachers do?
Yeah, so a bit of all of it. I'll just say one other thing just quickly before, because I forgot to say it. So there is a warm-up routine that they do afterwards. So at the end of the day, the sort of fifth step, they've learned all those notes, but it's not got deep into their more long-term memory. So then there's a little warm-up routine that they do for a few weeks, just a 5-minute warm-up routine to help it to go into more long-term memory. So on to teachers. So I've been really curious. It's been amazing. I only released it 5 weeks ago. I get contacted by teachers nearly every single day, which is just incredible. I get sent videos and pictures and stories. And so I've been hearing them use it in all the ways you said. So group lessons, and it seems to be working best in group. So in the app, you'll see there's a little book symbol next to some of the menu items. And those are the bits that's supposed to be read to the student. And we found in testing that it really worked better if it was read to the student, even if the student was a teenager. So it seems to be working best in the group lessons when the teacher does with the whole group, those bits that are read, so reads the story together to the group, and then the students can independently work through the games. And because the ones that listen to the piano can be done, use either mic or MIDI, so it means that if there's a computer lab a keyboard lab with the headphones, they can do it that way. So that's group lessons. Then you've got teachers using it over, what do you call them? Internet lessons.
Online lessons. Yeah.
Online lessons. Yeah. So the way they're often doing that is they're getting the student to download the app at home and then do a share screen. And then they sort of can check in and see how they're getting on. But then the students continuing sort of for homework. And then you've got teachers like Rebecca Stewart, who tested it, who you know very well. So she mainly did it, when she tested it, she just did it entirely in lessons and just broke it up, just did like a little 10 minutes per lesson and did it entirely in lessons, so it can work that way. So it seems to be working quite flexibly. The only thing I found that isn't working well is when students are given too much independence with those bits that are supposed to be read. So if they're being asked to kind of read it all themselves without any teacher input, that isn't working so well. But it's been requested that I get the app to start reading to them.
Oh,
and then
okay.
And in time, I might do that. I'm hoping to do that, but not yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are there any students that this system wouldn't work well for?
Yeah, so we found that students do need to know some basic phonics. They need to know that cut is for camel and is for dolphin, etc. Very young students might find the stories a little bit, these are sort of stories with the same kind of themes as a Disney movie. So if the kid was too young for a Disney movie, then I'd suggest they probably shouldn't have these stories. But because I knew the average age of students starting to read music is often around 7, I thought actually I wouldn't pitch them too young because I wanted it to work for those students and also for even teenagers and adults. So I wanted to try and create stories that would be engaging even for for teenagers and adults. Yes, and also students that don't think in English. So I did test on some. So my stepmom, I actually tested on her, and she really thinks very much in French, and she really struggled because she was having to do an extra step of translating the characters into English. But having said that, I have had a father from Portugal who's done it with his son, and he translated the stories into English and had to spend a little bit of extra time teaching his son the 29 words in English, but it actually worked. And within 2 weeks, his son was reading music for the first time, which was very exciting to the father.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, but I think that is a bit unusual. So I think generally, ideally, you want to be thinking in English.
Okay. So I'm curious, now that you've gone through this whole process of building the app and the stories and all of this, how is your note reading today?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So what ended up happening is quite quickly I was able to start, using the mixture of the app and in intervals, I was able to start playing some simple classical pieces of music. And the first book I started playing out of was my simple classics book that was actually my grandfather's, who passed away. And it was a very emotional moment for me for two reasons. Well, one, because he never got to read music. And I thought if I'd come up with this system before, I could have taught him and that would have brought him so much joy. And then just the tears of joy at finally being able to start reading music. So there's no way I'm anything like a piano teacher when it comes to reading music, but I am able to sit down and play out of my simple classics book, and yeah, I'm just still working on it every day. And what's been interesting is that even though I started off obviously thinking C for camel and D for dolphin, most of the time I'm just seeing the notes as C's or D's or whatever. But I'm trying to primarily read by intervals. So I'm trying to not even think about the note names. But yeah, I'm really enjoying, for the first time in my life, being able to read music. It's it's amazing.
And what about your kids? Are they reading music too?
They are. But interestingly enough, I just asked them at the dinner table about this. So my son, he's 11. He really enjoys reading music. And my daughter is reading music nearly at the same level as him. She's younger, she's 8, but she likes to play by ear more. So I think it might end up follows in my footsteps, but she's already playing, reading music far better than I ever could, so up until now. Yeah, so I'm very pleased that they're both making that. And I got them very soon after I taught them the notes and intervals. I got them a proper teacher as well. So
okay. So you said it's only been out for about 5 weeks. What is your dream for the future of the Noteology app? What if you could wave a magic wand, what would you want to happen for the future?
So I think because I've seen such success and other teachers are seeing such success with this, I just would love more people to know about it. And I'd love, kind of my dream, and this is what kept me working, because it's been intense. This 2.5 years has been intense working. I've been working sort of 70-hour weeks between the homeschooling and yeah. But what kept me going was this idea that no child would have to struggle reading the notes again. So that's sort of my dream. And so, yeah, just getting it out there as widely as possible. I've already been contacted by 3 teachers from countries like France, Portugal, and Spain that use the solfège system. So it may be in time I develop it also for the solfège, because it can work for fixed solfège, but not the one that moves about. So yeah, so I would love to hear stories one day of kids who, well, I'm already hearing them. So that the father in Portugal, his son had been for years playing by ear, and he managed to teach his son every single state in America, but he could not get his son to learn to read the notes. And using Noteology, he was so excited about it. He actually called up yesterday the head of EPTA, that's the European Piano Teachers Association in Portugal, to tell him about Noteology, which is encouraging. And I wonder, his son, I'm curious to see if he ends up becoming a pianist or something, but I'd be so excited to meet future pianists that, started with Noteology, who maybe wouldn't have learned to read notes otherwise. That'd be very exciting to me.
Yeah. Well, your excitement for this comes through loud and clear. It gets me excited, and I hope the listeners get excited too. Before we tell listeners where they can get the app and everything, is there anything else that you want to share before we finish up?
I just maybe to share one cool story that, do you know what I'd love to share is a few of the reviews I've had, because they've been so
great.
Touching. And when you've worked so hard and then you get reviews like this, it just absolutely makes your day. So from Professor Helen Marley, who's got the wonderful book, Succeeding at the Piano, the method books that are interval-based books. She said, a really amazing teaching tool that everybody needs, a pedagogical resource for generations to come, which meant so much to me. And then Rebecca Stewart, who obviously told you about me, she wrote a review saying unbelievably effective. And I won't read the whole thing, but she put, I wouldn't have believed it except that I watched it happen, because she was so shocked at the result she saw. And a teacher just contacted me, I think 2 days ago, Christina Newell, and she said, I think Noteology is going to revolutionize the music pedagogy world, which is a pretty cool thing.
That's high praise.
So those have been very, very encouraging. And also another thing that's been encouraging is seeing parents learn to read music alongside their children. And that's what happened when we tested. It was supposed to be the kids testing, but the parents would end up often learning with the kids. And I think when the parents can be very involved in their children's piano lessons, because they can actually read the music a bit, that can really help the students.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So we've had all this build up. Tell listeners where they can find this app and try it out for themselves.
Yes. So it's www.noteology.app. So Noteology is spelled Noteology.app. And then it can be found, that will give you the links, but it can be found on Android and on iOS, and it works on the phone and the iPad and tablets and And I think that's
amazing.
It. Oh, and I was going to say again, I know I said it earlier, but the treble note system's free, so you can just try it out for yourself, and you don't need to pay for that. And
Okay, and then if people want the full system, how much is the app?
So it costs $10 per year for the app, which I kind of priced it at the price of a method book, or I also thought about a pizza.
Yeah.
I wanted it to be very, very affordable, so that not only could the teacher have it for very cheap, but it meant that if the teacher wanted the student to have it at home, it wasn't going to be a burden to the families. So that's how
right. And they wouldn't really need it for more than a year, right? A teacher might want to do a continuing subscription. But okay. Well, Rowina, this was so fun to talk to you and hear about your passion project that you've turned into a business now. So thank you for sharing. I can't wait to hear from listeners how they use the app and how it works for them. And I'm sure that they'll want to let you know as well. If they wanted to reach out to you directly, is there a way that they could do that?
Yes, absolutely. So hello@noteology.app. I do have a Facebook for Noteology app on Facebook that you'll see there's a little camel. That's our mascot. Okay. Because there's another, they can find me there.
All right. Thank you so much, Rowina. It was great to meet you and talk with you today.
Thank you so much, Rachel, for having me.
I hope that you enjoyed this episode with Rowina. I encourage you to check out the Noteology app and see what you think. I would love to explore Rowina's idea of using it for group classes, or I was even thinking during the interview that it could work as a week-long note reading camp. How amazing would that be to have all your beginner students come to camp for a week and leave knowing all the notes on the staff? I would love to hear if you have other ideas of how to use this app with your students, or if you try it out, let me know how it goes. All right, that is the end of the show this week. Next week on the podcast, I'm talking with Andrea Humphrey, who has a new method book that she has created when she also saw a need in the piano teaching community. Be sure to join me back here next week for that interview. I'm Rachel Ehring, and you've been listening to the Top Music Piano Podcast. I will talk with you again very soon.
How do you keep up to date with all the latest trends and research into music education? How do you connect with other teachers around the world and make sure your teaching stays fresh and relevant for students of all ages and stages, both now and into the future? I created our Top Music Pro membership to be the one-stop shop for music teaching resources, training, support and community, and I'd love for you to come and join us inside. With over 40 comprehensive training courses, hundreds of teaching demonstrations and lesson plans, free monthly sheet music, discounts and all the business and pedagogy support you could ever need, Top Music Pro is the community you've been looking for. If you're ready to level up your learning from the podcast and join thousands of other teachers in our global network, head over to topmusicpro.com today.